is not the man I'm going to talk about, so I just want to clarify that. I have a 30-year-old son. He's a graduate from UNT with a degree from chemistry. He's pursuing his master's from Texas A&M in biology, and he just got accepted in medical school. That's who we are today. Forgive me if I get emotional, because it's hard to talk about this stuff. But that's who we are today. Now I'm going to flash back 31 years. Now, 31 years ago, I'm a veteran. I was in the Air Force and then the military. He was 34 years old, 9 years older than me, and also in the military. He worked in the same office as I did. I was not attracted to him, but he became obsessed with me. Over time, he worked his way into my life. Once he got in my apartment, he never left. He would never leave. And it took me 11 years to get away from him. Let me ask you, what's it like being in an abusive relationship? It's like running for your life, literally. The first time I left him was when I was pregnant with Michael in Okinawa, Japan. Now, do keep in mind we were military. And I had spent some of my own tax return money on myself, so he got mad, and forgive me for cussing, but he got pissed off. And so what he did is he tore up the apartment, he threw things at me. He took the food, he threw it in the sink, he threw kerosene on the food. He took the keys and he told me if I wanted to eat, go out and beg. Then that night he threw water on me, threw pulled blankets off of me, and I ended up sleeping in a wet, cold bed. The next morning I got up, I packed my duffel bag, I got ready to leave, went upstairs to a neighbor. Bless her heart, she hid me, but she couldn't take me to the base because she didn't have a car, so we had to wait for her husband. Around 5:30 or so, we heard a knock on the door, and it's him. She hid me. She told him I wasn't there, and then we were still waiting for her husband. Like a fool, I went down there, and that's where a lot of times we've made our mistakes. We do the wrong thing. To see what he was doing, the apartment was in complete shambles. And then that's when I said, I am leaving. He told me, no, you're not leaving. I'll punch you in the belly, and I'll bury you in the sand, and you'll die. So what I did is I bolted out, I ran down this Japanese street, and then to this Japanese store. They couldn't speak English, and I couldn't speak Japanese, but they knew I needed help. So they hid me in a closet, came looking for me. They denied I was there, and they eventually got me on base, and I went home. And I only got to stay in the United States long enough to have my baby, because when I went to see the lawyer, and because I was pregnant, I couldn't get a divorce. And the reason I share my story with you is a lot of times the law hurts us when we're in domestic or in violent situations. And so what I ended up doing is he showed up at our door, at my mom's door, the weekend my baby was to be born. She was scared, so she insisted I went back with him. So her and my brothers took him, myself, and my baby back to Okinawa, Japan, and we were there for 5 years. What's it like being in an abusive relationship? It is like always living in fear. Now we're back in the United States. We came back to the U.S. from Okinawa, Japan, and he could buy guns. Well, he would chase me down to the convenience store if I was at the convenience store too long. There was nights I woke up and he had a gun in my head. And I asked him one time, what are you doing? And he said, you know, someone's thought about it 1,000 times before they actually kill somebody. So the second time I left him was on a Saturday morning. He was upset because the neighbor was making too much noise, yelling and screaming at me about it, telling me to go shut him up. I told him, you go tell him to be quiet. So now he's pushing me around, shoving me down the chair. And I jumped up, I pushed back, I grabbed my son, I kicked the door open, we ran down the street, we called the cops. They didn't come. The first sergeant came, but she was kind enough to hold him back. I got my stuff when I could. I left, and I went to Texas. We were in California, and I went home to Texas to my big sister. Now, finally, I'm at the divorce table. And the lawyer, bless his heart, is so excited. Mary, you're going to be a free woman today. And I asked, well, what about Michael? Well, he's got to go to California. So what would you do? So we're back with him again. So now, what's it like being in an abusive relationship? You feel like you're going crazy. I didn't know it, but I was what psychologists call hitting the wall. And what it means is I had stuffed so much anger and so much frustration that I was losing it. I was starting to go crazy with him. And now Michael's 11 years old now. We're living in the same neighborhood. My neighbors are starting to help me. And so what really kind of changed is one occasion I felt the anger just starting to swell up in me. And I think that's when I found my resolve. So we did move out. Michael and I got an apartment. And then I promised him women in abusive situations, we're always grabbing what we can and we're running. that day I decided, I told my little boy, I'll be back to get this stuff. And I did. And this is what happened. It was on Valentine's Day, and I'm calling, the week before, I'm calling movers. I call the first mover, I tell him my situation, he declines to move me. I call a second mover and tell him what's going on, and he declines to move me. I call a third mover, little guy movers out of Denton, Texas, and he says, man, you're the third move this month. What's your address? And he wasn't afraid of it, and he helped me. So I go to the house, I meet the movers with an unsigned restraining order in my hand. Another thing I didn't know was the daggone thing wasn't signed, so that means it wasn't valid. The movers are waiting for me, and we enter into the house, and there he is. And as we start to move my stuff out, he calls me and the movers to the bedroom, and he pulls the blankets away from the bed, and there's just a whole slew of handguns. And the mover looks at me and he says, you need to go make a call. So I run across the street, call the police, and I'm outside in the yard talking to a policeman, and he bolts out of the house, running down the house with his hand in his jacket, which implies he's got a gun, right? So that big 300-pound cop, Texas cop, parted his legs and and he told him to stop, and he said stop, and he did, thank God. But then another cop came, and then so it was 2 movers, 2 cops, and a lawyer, and I moved out, and I never went back. And I share this story with you because a lot of times, anyone who's in the legal field, the problem is a lot of it's our legal system. If you ever leave your children when you're in an abusive situation, you leave them behind, you can lose them. I did not know that. You know, there's just so many things. And I have a vision for nonprofits. There's a coffee company where we could open up little coffee stands for women in shelters, and they could sell coffee. I'd have to go with them and help them and teach them. They could make immediate money, and they could build up retail customers and create residual income. And real quick, what happened to him? He moved on to his 4th wife. She put him in jail 3 times. The last time she put him in jail was for choking her out, and that's a state felony in the state of Texas. That means that they go to jail. And now she's in hiding. But, and
Any other sensitive subject, and this is majority a room full of women, so if anybody will have a question,
Just out of curiosity, the domestic violence, what is the rate of that going on in this country? Like, is it 1 out of 3 women that are in domestic violence situations that are they even aware that they are in it? I mean, like, what is the statistics?
I don't know. I mean, they change.
Okay.
I will say domestic violence laws change from state to state.
Okay.
And if you're in a domestic violence situation and you run with your children, once you proceed with a divorce, then the law makes you stay there. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it's better not to ask for a divorce, because if you got to run for your life, go. Because I learned that the hard way when I finally started moving forward to my divorce. My little boy had to go to his house, and if I didn't do it, they put me in jail. So they put a lot. So sometimes it's better just to do your best you can. And another thing too is those movies. I quit watching those movies. The Burning Bad and all that, because those are sad movies. I wish we'd have more movies where we have victories and victorious endings, and stuff like that. Thank you.
So how did you include your son, in his childhood? What did you tell him about his father, or is this something he saw, like, evidently?
He saw it every day, and he had a lot of emotional trauma from it. And that's why I want to tell you who you are today, because it's taken a lot of counseling and the love of God. He found the Lord, thank God, because usually they end up medicating the pain. Because, he's abusive with me, they're abusive with the children. Don't let anybody kid you. And another thing too that really used to hurt my feelings is people would say, oh, you're overreacting. Really? I had to go to counselors just to get to the court. And I had this psychologist tell me, oh, well, he just hit the table. And I said, really? Let me come to your house and tear up your daughter's room, and call her names. And let's see how you feel about it. And it's just, all you can do is shield them when they're in abusive situations. And the truth of it is, you can't. The only way to change it is to stop it. And the only way to stop it is to get away. And it's hard. It's a different story when a woman's leaving an abusive man. Oftentimes they'll leave the wife for another woman. But when you're leaving them, it's like a challenge because they're losing control. They're losing their power, and they don't like that. He used to read all my letters, count all my stamps, had complete control of my money, and they do it very quickly. As soon as they get in a relationship, they start stripping that woman's independence, and it's fast, and it's strong. And being in the military, being alone, I was prime. I was a real good, it was good to be, I was in a situation, so if you're by yourself, you're going to be a good victim for them. So you have to watch yourself. And this is what I've learned. I've gotten older. If you feel that way about somebody, don't be nice to them quick. Because if you don't, the cops and the law and the courts is... When I was getting divorced from him, and I called CPS, and I was crying, and I said, he's an alcoholic, he's abusive, he's this. And her question was, why didn't you call the cops when it's happening? And it hurt me. Because I learned, well, how would you like to be in a house with a, violent man pushing you around, throwing things, going crazy, threatening you, you're going to call the cops, and report it? See, they don't understand. They don't understand it. And you have to gain you find your strength and your power. And you keep it. You don't let anybody take it from you. And I just want to say, everyone, thank you so much for caring and for listening to my story. God bless you. Thank you.